Welcome back to New Realities. My name is Alan Steinfeld. And if you've been watching this program, you know that consciousness is the big aspect of this program. Like, what is consciousness and how does it work and how does it affect us? That's why I'm talking today to Dr. Anoop Kumar, who's actually bringing consciousness to the healthcare system. And I think it's a great thing you're doing because we use that word a lot. No one knows what it means, and no one knows how it would actually work with healthcare. So why don't you define consciousness so we're all on the same page? Okay.
Sure. Well, very simply, consciousness is the space in which everything happens.
Mm. I'm not
Very
sure
simply.
I understand that.
Everything that we know, everything that we see, smell, touch, hear, taste, everything that we think, everything that we feel, all of that, the experience of space, the experience of time, all of that arrives to us through this medium of consciousness. Essentially, if we're not conscious, all of it might as well not exist. And so the question is, what is this medium, this amazing medium that has the capacity to seem to bring to us all of these things? That's the question that what is consciousness is asking.
So what is this medium? So is you have to go back to some basic questions then. Is
Yeah.
consciousness a phenomena, an epiphenomena of the brain, or is the brain a product and the body? I mean, your friend Deepak says, you know, we we are living in consciousness, but how do you define that scientifically? What came first?
Yeah. Well, let me get to that. Let me just say another thing real
Yes,
quick, which is that we're doing this live stream right now, right?
yes.
There is a medium that is carrying this to people that is invisible. And that's the underlying technology, right? Nobody's looking at the technology. They're seeing your face and my face and hearing our voices. But we easily forget that all of that is actually transcoded into a way, into some medium, and then arrives to us. And if that were gone, nothing else would be known. So consciousness is like that. It's actually much more than that, but it's a good way of starting to think about that. And then to get to your question, what we are saying is that at a fundamental level, it is not that there is a brain out there. Because remember, how do we even know there's a brain? It's because we see it or we think about it. We've seen it in a textbook or we've thought about it. 99.9% of people have thought about it because we've all been told there's a brain in our skulls. So it's either a thought or it's a direct perception. If you're in surgery, you can actually see the brain. But even thought and perception, again, arrive through a medium. And that medium, again, is consciousness. So what we're saying is it is the medium, in this case, consciousness, that is modifying and rippling as the objects of the world, including the brain, just as it is the lake. When it starts to ripple, you see the concentric circles all around. And if you say, wow, look at those amazing circles, what are those circles? Well, they're nothing but the lake. It's just that the lake has started to ripple now. Similarly, when consciousness ripples, we see bodies and brains and thoughts and space and time and a universe.
Right. I know you want to talk about the healthcare system, but I want to ask you, is this something you were innately born with, or did you come upon this with some kind of epiphany revelation?
Well, I was fortunate to be born into a family that was very interested in philosophy and spirituality as a child. So I had that exposure and I found it much more interesting than school, actually. And by the time I went to medical school, I wondered what we were doing because we're not actually understanding the human being completely. We're really mechanizing people into robots. And then we have a belief that we can then treat or diagnose adequately. And it's just not true. So I was fortunate to have that background, but then I did dive into it myself for a long time. I really, looked at various disciplines. I reconciled that with my own experience. And so it's been a combination of both that's really taken me to where I am today.
Right. And you've had some experiences where this became a revelation for you. Wasn't just a philosophy, consciousness is the ground
Right.
of all being is the kind of popular.
Right.
But what was your experience that said, oh yeah, I am consciousness, that you are part of the lake, the
Yeah.
ripples. Yeah.
There are many windows that opened over time since childhood, but probably the most dramatic one was when I was in medical school. And I was reading a book. I was home one day on a vacation and reading something in my room in my parents' house. And then this giant explosion went off. It's the best way I can describe it. Just a boom. And there I was. It felt like I was sitting in the sun in this magnificent stellar blaze. And, you know, all the things, right? The peace, the bliss, the perfection, the timelessness, and just drinking it all in. I didn't realize this all the time, but this is what was happening, just drinking it in and drinking it in. And at some point felt like it's complete, it's done, and was about to leave the lifetime at that point. And then this being of light stepped forward and said, essentially, not yet. You know, there's more, it wouldn't be fair. There's more to be done. And I kind of hesitated, maybe reluctantly a little bit. And then with that hesitation, everything re-imploded. And I came back to the room, came back to the body, and everything was radically different at that point in terms of how perception happens, whether thought happens, who I was, what the nature of the world is. Everything had shifted. And it took about probably 10 to 12 years, something like that, to really get a grounding and some kind of steadiness to start moving forward.
Right. So you had a spiritual awakening that was like popped you open. Otherwise, it's just philosophy, but then you've had a real experience. So you're bringing this into healthcare and talking about it, but people aren't having the experience like you had. So how are you bringing this into other people's lives in the way
Well, I
that?
think it's important to say that we all have this within us. When we hear about such things, when people are speaking genuinely about some things, when people are creating offerings that are genuine from this place that is real, that is experienced, then it touches something live in every single person, because this is not something exclusive. Every single human being, every animal, every plant, everything has this as its root. So it's a matter of resonance where you're like, well, this kind of feels right. This feels right. But the thing is, when we're talking about systemic transformation, like healthcare, feels right is great. It starts there, but it's not enough. From feels right, we have to go to why does it feel right? How does it feel right? And then how do those fit the models we have today? How does it make sense in terms of science? How does it make sense in terms of philosophy? How does it make sense in terms of the models for healthcare we have? And then how do we communicate those models? So you can see there's a stepwise progression from like, this feels right, yes, to then developing that, codifying that, communicating that. And that's when it becomes the new standard. And that's really my goal. You know, I'm an emergency doctor, and I see every day in the ER that people don't know that healing is possible. People don't know what can be done. And that's because we really have diminished the way we see people by roboticizing them, by mechanizing them. And that is what we're changing by developing this knowledge and these models and this communication.
But it is kind of ironic that you are looking at consciousness and you're talking about the body at the same time, you know, so you're talking about something that's not the body, uh and trying to bring it into the body. So it's a little bit of a, you know, I mean, it's not quite disconnect, but how do you make the connection? Because yeah, consciousness is great, but it's not of the body, and then you're working with the body. So make that connection.
That's a great question. Absolutely great question. Thank you for asking it. Uh, there is no disconnect. The body is a pattern of consciousness. That's the key. That's where we go from duality to non-duality, right? So there's this idea that, well, there's the mind and body, right? It's the mind-body connection, where there's consciousness and matter, where there's consciousness and energy. And what we're talking about there is a particular level of perception. So at a certain level of perception, they look different, right? Just like with a certain vision, this is one hand and this is one hand. It's two things. But you zoom out and see my whole thing, you're like, well, no, actually, there's just Anoop. And Anoop represents itself as one hand and the other hand. It's the same thing with matter and energy, with consciousness and body. They're one and the same thing. And that's what we talk about as mind-body flow theory. That's one of the models we use as mind-body flow theory, which says, what is a river? A river is the flow of water. If you take away water, the river disappears completely, right? What is wind? Wind is the flow of air. If you take away air, wind completely disappears. Well, what is the body? The body is the flow of the mind. If you take away the mind completely, the body disappears. And by the way, that's what we call death. When the mind starts to leave the body, guess what happens to the body? It literally disintegrates. So right. It's a great question. And that's the huge step, actually, Alan, that we have to take right now, is this shift beyond this dualistic thinking to say that consciousness is fundamental and it is representing itself at these various levels of patterns.
Right. I know you want to get into healthcare, which is great, but I just have just a few more questions. The difference between mind and consciousness, and you said take away the mind. It's really you're taking away the spirit, not the mind, as some people would say. So how do you make all those distinctions?
Sure. Well, the main thing to understand, and we talk about this in module 1 of the course, the main thing to understand is that when a person says consciousness, if 10 people say the word consciousness, it's very likely that all 10 mean something different. That is the key thing to understand. The word consciousness, it's a popular word, it's a powerful word, but its greatest use is to understand the confusion around it. It's like, when you take a multiple choice test, you might be able to get the right answer, right? Let's say it's A, B, C, D, E, and I pick B and it happens to be the right answer. And you can kind of get lucky maybe and get through the test. But the way you really know your stuff, and you can check, do I really know my stuff, is when you not only know the right answer, but you know why each of the other answers is wrong, right? It's not A because blah, blah, blah. It's not C because blah, blah, blah. It's not just, I kind of feel like it's B, but I know why every single one is right and wrong. And that's the same thing for consciousness. When somebody says the word consciousness, what do they mean? How are they using it? Where are they coming from? What's the background behind that? If we can see all that in the moment that they're speaking, our knowledge level, it's like the power meter in video games. It goes through the roof. So that's the main thing to understand. And that's a progression. If we want to talk about consciousness, mind, and body, let's say, here's how I would say it. Consciousness in a most fundamental sense is not just a local phenomenon. It's not my thought. It's not my consciousness and Alan's consciousness. No. And 8 billion people's consciousness. We're talking about a non-local, unpatterned phenomena, a fundamental intelligence, a fundamental awareness. Just like in the dream, where does the dream world come from? That underlying dreaming mind is the entire world. Even the space and time and the physics of the dream is nothing but that mind, right? Which is this non-local mind. That's kind of like consciousness in this world. This non-local consciousness that patterns as space and time and the laws of physics and human interaction and relationships and evolution. That is consciousness. When it starts to take on a certain pattern, that is mind. So in its native state, in its immaculate, unpatterned state, it is this potential, this potentiality of intelligence, this fullness that is unpatterned. When it starts to pattern, we call it mind. And some of those patterns are localized. So there's Anoop's mind, there's Alan's mind, there's everybody's mind. When those patterns become recurrent, such that they happen over and over and over and distinct, that's what we call solidity, and that's the physical world. And then that's what we call the body. So unpatterned consciousness, patterning mind, repeated patterns that form grooves and become quote unquote visible, that is what we call physical world, the body.
So is it possible to have access to non-local consciousness beyond the body, near-death experience, astral travel? I mean, what's your opinion about those aspects?
Yeah, and not only is it possible, we are always connected to this. We are always connected to this. Just like a plant is always connected to the soil, to the entire earth, right? Because its roots go beneath. And once you go beneath and you're touching the earth, that earth is a vast plane. So the plant is always connected to and the entire intelligence of that earth nurtures that plant. Now, the plant at the top may realize it or not, but it is being informed by that either way. Similarly, we at our root, we arise from this consciousness. Every single being, every single thing, all things. This goes beyond like animate and inanimate. This goes beyond living things and dead things. Every single thing at its root arises from this consciousness. And so all of us are informed by this. Now, above the neck, at the level of the brain and the individual mind, we may or may not realize it. And that's where the reconnection has to happen. It's an opening into ourselves. And then, of course, all of those things are possible at the deeper level as we become aware of them.
Right. Because I teach remote viewing, and it's the ability to extend one's mind non-locally, because like you say, consciousness is everywhere. And so you think that people, or this frame, whatever we want to call this, is still individualized outside the body? Is that where you go with some of this?
It
Like
can be,
maybe
it doesn't
that's,
have to be. It's,
yeah.
I mean, when the awareness goes beyond the body, it can remain focal, or it can be diffuse. It can be non-local. And it can be everything in between. It can be non-local as the universe, or it can be non-local like a city or a town or a country.
Right.
That's the beauty of the technology we're playing with. This is the greatest technology in the history of the world, because the history of the world was literally created by this technology.
Are you saying consciousness is a technology? Is that how you're using that word?
Consciousness is a technology. It is a tech. It is the only technology, frankly. And we think about, so right now we're using, let's say, YouTube or Zoom. We're using some software, right? How is that software programmed? It's in some programming language somebody created, right? How is that programming language created? It's actually created from ones and zeros, from machine language. How are ones and zeros created? Ones and zeros are actually measurements of voltage, right? A greater voltage is 1, less voltage is 0. So how is voltage created? Voltage has to do with the flow of electrons. Where do electrons come from? Electrons come from the electron field, which is infinite, extends throughout space and time. Where does space and time come from? Space and time is a pattern of this non-local consciousness. So the original platform where YouTube is coded is consciousness. The original platform in which we structure what we call physical reality is consciousness. So this is the original technology.
Right. So you would say, yeah, like you're saying, everything is consciousness. So then how do you apply this to healthcare? Because that's really your big concern, and and focus is that you want people to understand this so they feel differently about their bodies, I think, and healthcare, and how we take care of the physical. Yeah.
Well, the main thing is we have to see you completely. That is the bottom line. Back there in that bookshelf, I have Netter's Atlas of Human Anatomy, which is the atlas that we use in medical school to learn anatomy, incredibly detailed pictures. But the title isn't complete. It says the Atlas of Human Anatomy. It's not. It's the Atlas of Human Physical Body Anatomy. It's not complete human anatomy. And that is where our ignorance shows up. That book should be 10 times as thick if it's actually complete human anatomy. And that's why we're offering a model of whole human anatomy, where we look at the different bodies of the person. See, a person is not just a physical body. That's just the outer, that's the winter coat that you put on, right? For a lifetime. That's just there from December to February, right? But it goes away, and there's still the rest of us that's always there underneath. There's the mental body with our thoughts and our feelings. There's the energetic body with chakras, right? With meridians. There's the informational body, which is our non-local layer, which we can access remote viewing, for example. And then beyond that space and time of the informational body, there is the illumining light, because of which we can even know all of the other layers, which is what we're calling consciousness. So these are all of our bodies. We have 5 bodies. We don't just have one body. And if we have this insane belief, as we do in healthcare, that you just have this one outer shell of a body, and we believe we can do everything through this body, we can diagnose everything and treat everything, then we're going to have a healthcare system like we have today. And we're going to have situations where people don't know that healing is possible, that cure is possible, that independence is possible, because we're trying to squeeze all of your 5 bodies into this outer shell. So that's why we're offering a complete model of whole human anatomy as one of the different models that we're offering in this course to advance healthcare.
I think this is so incredible. I think this is the best thing that can happen to healthcare, is to know who we are as full human beings. And like I think you're saying, have more power over choices, over the way we choose to live. And so
absolutely.
you have a whole course. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I mean, that's a huge point you said. Power. Yeah. Power is the word, Alan. Power is the word. Because right now, what happens is, if we believe a person is just a physical body, what happens is the power goes to somebody else. Because most of us, are not going to dissect ourselves. We're not going to dissect ourselves into pieces and then understand the internal organs and all of those things, right? So the power immediately shifts. But if we say, wait, I can go through the mental body and you can experience what's happening on the inside, even at the physical level, at the mental level, at the energetic level, at the informational level, and down to this fundamental light that we are, this eternal consciousness. If I can do this, well, guess where the power is now? The power is not because that other person is an expert. They went to medical school and did all the programs and the advanced training, but they never learned about the mental body, the energetic body, the informational body, consciousness. They don't even understand that the physical body is actually the representation of these inner layers. So now all of a sudden I can respect their expertise and say thank you. And I can also say thank you for this incredible expertise I have as well. So the power shifts tremendously in healthcare. And when power shifts, everything shifts. The personnel will shift, the money will shift, the cost will shift, healing will shift, health will shift, everything shifts with that.
So you're really part of changing the paradigm from a materialistic, mechanistic worldview into something else. But so many people, including doctors, or especially doctors, are programmed, they're conditioned to not think the way you're thinking.
Yes. And sadly, that's why here in the US, doctors, we're killing ourselves at twice the rate of the general population. The rate of suicide is twice the rate. Wow. And I've heard in some cases with nurses, it's that or even 3 times. So that's all we need to know, my friends. The people in healthcare that are supposed to have the knowledge, that do have the knowledge. I'm not putting us doctors now. We do have a kind of very important knowledge. And despite that, we're killing ourselves at twice the rate. So we have to ask, what do we truly know? And where are we going wrong? And the mistake we're making today is that everybody's talking about operational problems. Well, it's the policy. Well, it's the, it's the pills, it's the cost, it's the health insurance, it's the hospital systems. Yes, but those are all symptoms, and in allopathy and mainstream medicine today, we're used to dealing with symptoms, not the real cause. And we're doing it even when we're diagnosing what's happening in healthcare. Those are actually symptoms. The fundamental issue is that there is an ignorance of who we are and an ignorance of knowledge of how to heal and how to represent that. It's an informational problem. It's a knowledge problem. It's not fundamentally an operational problem. We keep diverging. We keep kind of distracting ourselves and going into this area of operational problems because that's where we're comfortable. But the real problem is our knowledge base is grossly insufficient and frankly dangerous. And that is why we have the situation we have in health today.
And I think you're doing an amazing, innovative program because you are taking this into the healthcare system and maybe changing people's lives. I mean, hopefully that's your intent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, let's go over, you can do the screen share and then you can actually outline to people what this is about. You're saying it's for healthcare workers, but it can also be for anyone interested in this, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is for anybody who wants to see healthcare transform. If you ever dreamed that I know healthcare like real transformation, okay, not the stuff we've heard for the last several decades, this kind of shift in policy, a little payment structure, some incentive here, all of that is important. But the core of this is knowledge transformation. It's how do I see myself? How do we model ourselves completely so that healthcare sees us, so that we see ourselves, so that others see us? When we see ourselves completely and model that and bring those models into healthcare, the whole thing is going to transform and we are going to be a new planet. And that is the goal here, is entire system transformation. So that's why it's called the science of consciousness and healthcare transformation. And let me just say, the key part of that transformation, that knowledge transformation, is recognizing that consciousness is fundamental. That it's not this tiny thought that comes out of the brain, that it's not this feeling that comes out of the brain. It is something much more fundamental than this, and it's flipping the entire paradigm. So that's the key aspect of it.
And there's your friend Deepak. How is Deepak involved in this program?
Well, he and I have worked together over the years, and he has been kind enough to invite me, to many talks and to shows with him. So I greatly appreciate, everything he's done in terms of helping me to bring this message to people. Great.
And he's, of course, a big promoter of consciousness. And I think one of the major influencers in the planet about, that consciousness is the ground of all being, the base of
Absolutely.
everything.
Absolutely. Yes. He has been
So,
at the forefront of integrating this in many disciplines.
so you have a course, an 8-week course, you said. How long is the
Yes.
course?
It's an 8 week
And
course. It's an 8 week
uh-huh.
course, and it's starting on April 9th, actually starting next Wednesday,
Okay.
April 9th, 2025. And we're going to have rolling admissions after that. And essentially what we're doing is having live classes on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And the recordings will be posted shortly after. So if you can't make it live, go to the recordings. We have all kinds of other content, other videos, other audio files, other readings, all in service of healthcare transformation through a deeper understanding of consciousness. And these are some of the models that we'll cover. Whole human anatomy, which I just spoke about, which is saying that, hey, you and I are just not a bunch of parts. There are many layers to who we are. What are those layers? How do we think about them scientifically? How do we build models for them? And how do we communicate that? How do we meet the language of healthcare today to transform it? So you can imagine wellness coaches would be ideal for this because they could up-level their practice with this knowledge. You can imagine holistic healthcare practitioners. So in our last cohort, we had chiropractors, we had Reiki teachers, we had meditation teachers, we had yoga instructors, Ayurveda teachers, and so on and so forth. The entire wellness movement, it's time for us to organize. It's time for us to understand the philosophy, the science, the history, the spirituality, the direct experience. And then how do you take all of that into models going forward? This is that time. That's what's so exciting about this time, is that it's time to take all of the things that the world has brought us to now over decades and take that next step collectively.
Right. I mean, the people interested in this already are open to this, but how do you reach a population that may have no idea, like maybe your doctor friends?
Well, the truth is, unfortunately, among so many doctors, there is so much suffering and there's so much awareness. I talk to my doc, even my doctor friends that are, not interested. If I would say consciousness, they might not be interested, or integrative medicine, they may not be interested. They just want to do their jobs and go home. But even they know that there's something deeply wrong here, that there are incentive misalignments that do not favor healing and cure, that there are problems in payments, that they're suffering. They don't like the way healthcare is being administered, even for clinicians. And so this fundamental recognition that there's something is wrong opens people up. And I myself was surprised, just being in this my whole life, I myself have been surprised how many people are just open to hearing. They just want a breath of fresh air, something to open up. So I think we're reaching tons of people, and I'm happy with that. So I don't worry too much about who is not going to be, who's not going to resonate with this. We have so many people that are resonating with this. Everybody interested in integrative medicine. There are entire fellowships now for integrative medicine that you do after your initial residency, right? Every single person should be taking this course because this uplevels your knowledge of integrative medicine by integrating the philosophy, the science at a level beyond all of the integrative medicine fellowships.
Yeah, it should be taught in medical schools, right? I mean,
it should be taught, and it will be. It will be taught in medical school. In fact, I'm trying to get this into a couple medical school curriculum right now. This is one of the things that is really important for people to understand, right?
Yeah.
So I've heard from some people who have done integrative medicine fellowships, or some teachers. I know this already. I've studied this already.
Right.
We are taking this to an entirely new level. This is not just the knowledge of the last 10, 20, 30 years, right? So in the three minds framework, for example, we talk about how does physical reality arise in consciousness? You're not going to get that in integrative medicine fellowship. We talk about how do we go from the state of being local, that we experience ourselves here in this time and place, to something else, something beyond that. How does that happen? Why do we believe that there's a physical world over here and there's a world in consciousness over here? How do you reconcile that? Right? What is multidirectional healing? How is it that we can heal in multiple directions at the same time?
What does that mean, multiple directions?
Multiple directions meaning that, why are we putting all of our eggs in one basket, this basket of the physical?
Oh.
Because if you drop a pebble into a lake, it ripples in all directions. So why not the pebble of intervention, the pebble of action, the pebble of change? You can drop that into the energetic body. You can drop it into the mental body. You can drop it into the informational body. You can drop it into the nature of consciousness itself. And that ripple effect will go through all of our bodies and heal in that way. Right now, we pop the pill into the physical body. And then we essentially pray that hopefully it fixes all the other bodies. We don't even know that there are other bodies, but that's our kind of the religion of medicine today, right? But we need to go beyond that and realize, well, we can heal multidirectionally. So if that doesn't appeal to me, let me go to the energetic body, let me go to the mental body, and so on. So all of these options become available to us as we understand these models and start applying them. So this is an entirely different level. And what I love to say is that a lot of us have done the work to have some experience of consciousness, to have some understanding of consciousness. And I say this in the video at the top. I didn't play it here, but if you go to the top of this page here, you'll hear it in this video. And what I say is, that's not enough. That's not enough to shift this planet to a planet of healing.
Right. But this is a part of indigenous medicine. This is in Ayurvedic medicine, this philosophy, and Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine. So it's not new, but of course, Westerners don't know about those traditions. Is that it?
It's not just that. It's how do we take all of those and codify a model that the world can understand going forward, right? We still need Ayurveda. We still need indigenous medicine. We still need Reiki. We're not going to replace all those, but what we need to do is see the underlying philosophy and science that all of these are following, and bring that to the top, put that into different models that we can use, and then spread that. That is what's going to transform the planet. And that's why I talk about systemic change, not just individual. Individual change and transformation is part of it, but as that grows, it has to become systemic. So that's what that's about.
Okay, so what is this next part here? You're saying
it's what people experience from uncertainty to clarity, right? So what exactly is consciousness? How does it work? What are we talking about here? How does it relate to matter, the duality, the non-duality, all the things we talked about? Isolation to community, right? So I feel like I'm alone in this. Like I know this is there, but I don't have a community. We are creating a community around this. Okay. Impossible to inevitable. I always thought this was impossible. It seems like it's so hard. Everybody's been talking about it forever, but how do you actually do it? We get it done. We get it done together. And question to confidence so that you can also raise the level of your practice, right? You can elevate your practice so that you learn how to speak about this and communicate about this at a higher level. Frankly, at a higher level than most experts. Most experts will not have the cross-disciplinary understanding that we are covering in this course.
But so if you're a healthcare worker and are exposed to this, you're saying you'll get a better approach to helping people in the healthcare.
Absolutely. Not just healthcare worker, a wellness coach, holistic health practitioner, meditator, yoga instructor, any way involved in health and wellness and human potential, human development. We are talking about fundamental models of being human and advancing human potential. And this is the future knowledge of this world, period. You can see it already, right? Why does every academic center in the US now have a center for integrative medicine or complementary medicine? Why is that? In mainstream healthcare, every major academic center will have that. Why? Why is the wellness industry worth trillions of dollars? Why are hospital systems panting to put wellness into their marketing, right? They just want to use the word wellness because they know that is the future. That's where everything is going. And if you're a yoga instructor, a meditation teacher, a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, you're a wellness coach, it's really important you understand that you are the future of healthcare. In fact, you are the present of healthcare. The way we think about healthcare, what we understand healthcare to be, is going to be different very soon. It's not going to be hospitals and doctors and nurses and all of those things. All of us are important, no doubt, but that's going to become less and less a piece of the pie as healing, cure, independence, and human potential become the centerpiece. And as this happens, it's going to be the holistic health practitioners, the wellness coaches, the people who are experiencing healing themselves. These will be the people that become the new healthcare. And this is the course to prepare you for that. That's what this is about.
Great. And you're the only teacher, or you have other people coming in to teach modules?
It's one of the modules, which is module 6, is taught by our medical director, Dr. Ahuja, who's a cardiologist and Ayurvedic practitioner. She teaches the module on landmark scientific studies in health and wellness, and I cover the other modules. And we may be getting other guest lecturers as well.
Okay.
So these are the 8 modules.
So
We
it's an
look,
8-week course, then you're
it's
saying,
an 8 week
basically.
course. It's an 8 week course. It's live on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. But like I said, it's for any time zone because the recordings are available within 24 hours and all of the other materials are available within 24 hours.
And
So
how many
module
times
one,
have you, oh,
yeah.
is this one? How many times have you done these courses?
So this is the second cohort that's beginning in
Oh,
1 week. We did the inaugural cohort with about 60 people we just wrapped it up last week, in fact.
okay.
An absolutely amazing experience. The range of people from holistic health practitioners to neuroscientists to doctors to business people to investors that were in this course, all in service of healthcare transformation based in the fundamental nature of consciousness. I mean, my heart was singing. My heart is still singing. It's just an
Mm.
absolutely phenomenal thing to witness this change that is happening.
Well, while you're still there, talking about how do people sign up? What's the website?
So this is the site, pneumocore.com/consciousness. And you'll see it in many places. Wherever you see the sign up, just click on that. And that's how you sign up.
Pneumocore.
Yeah.
Pneumocore. What?
Numocore.
Okay. Dot
I think
com slash consciousness dot com.
.com/consciousness. It's in the chat there, Alan. I put it in the
Oh,
chat.
okay. Oh, right, right. I want to just put it in the live chat
Yeah.
of
And it's
people
here at the top of the
watching.
screen. If you look at the URL at the top of the screen, it's
Oh,
there.
okay. I see that. Okay.
.com
Yeah,
slash
yeah.
consciousness.
No, that's great. I'm going to put this in the live chat. And why pneumocore? What does that actually mean, pneumo?
Well, that's great. So it's actually an acronym for our four engines. So if you go here, one of the models we use here is the four engines. I'll highlight it here. You can see. And it's this nutrition, movement, connection, and rest. The first two letters of each of these spell the word pneumocore.
Oh, I see. I
NU
see.
is nutrition, MO is movement, CO is connection, and RE is rest. And we use that because this is the approach to health and healing. It's a complete approach to health and healing across the mind and the body. And so we created all the companies have slick advertising campaigns for pills, right? The slick name for this pill and the other pill. Why don't we have a slick campaign for the most fundamental thing that helps people heal? That's nutrition, movement, connection, and rest. So that's what Pneumocore is. It's an acronym that represents our approach to healing for everyone, for 8 billion people.
Great. I think it's great. So
Yeah.
people then take your course and go out into the field and change healthcare. Really, that's what it's.
Yeah, they go out, they elevate their own practice. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, the other thing is we also add bonus sessions. So in addition to those 8 classes, we have bonus sessions on some Saturdays, which is kind of an opportunity for group work, to meet each other, to ask questions. It's just kind of Q&A. It's to integrate the knowledge because, Alan, it is a lot of knowledge. It is deep knowledge and it is broad knowledge. And there's no other course that's going to bring all of this together. So I want to do my best to make sure people can digest this meal. And that's why we do these additional bonus sessions as well.
Is
Yes, I
this,
encourage everybody to sign up.
but is this sponsored by any organization, or it's just you out there and the public? I mean,
It's
who's
us.
connected?
It's us doing the right thing, helping transform our planet. It's us. It's Pneumocore 100%. It's nutrition, movement, connection, and rest. It's whole human anatomy. It's who you are. It's about your power. It's about your capacity. It's about your practice, developing and elevating your practice. And it's about all of us coming out into this world in full force and transforming this planet into a planet of healing.
Couldn't we get this in hospitals and schools and things like that? I mean, as it catches.
Unfortunately, not a chance.
No.
Unfortunately, not a chance right now. No, this
Um,
kind of education does not exist in hospitals right now. Frankly, this kind of education doesn't exist in integrative medicine curricula right now, in other courses right now, because it's such the breadth and depth. If you look at the modules here,
yeah.
so in
Let's go.
module one, this question of what is consciousness that you and I discussed a little while ago,
Yeah.
that if 100 people talk about it, they're saying 100 different things using the same English word. That's a problem. That's a problem. And that's, I tell you, having talked to some of the top scientists in the world and the philosophers in the world about this topic, I'm telling you that's 50% of the confusion. It's not that it's uber technical and it's really abstract. I mean, that could be part of it, but it's that we don't even realize that everybody's using the word in a different way. So
Right.
what do the words mean when the different people are saying it? We actually look at different people talking and break down what they're saying. What is the background behind? What are the different philosophies that represent it? That's what we look at in Module 1. Module 2, we look at the whole history of healthcare and how it's developed and how it kind of follows these philosophies. In Module 3, we look at scientific theories. There are actual scientific theories that posit that consciousness is fundamental. We don't even hear about these.
Right.
What do you hear about when you talk about consciousness in public? It's woo, it's pseudoscience. How many times have you heard that? 1,000,000 times. But there's actually scientific theories that show that consciousness is fundamental. And when you put consciousness as fundamental and matter or the physical world as secondary, as arising in consciousness, you can get a stable framework for understanding. We don't talk about that. We talk about that in this course, right? That's really so what we're doing is building a foundation for this knowledge and practice.
Yeah. No, I was just going to ask you if you know Federico Ferragini, who's a physicist.
Yeah. I'm familiar with his work as well. And that's what we're talking about, right? Bringing together the core knowledge that is in all of this work in one place for everybody, making it accessible to everybody so that we can distribute this.
Right, because he's bringing it into physics, this idea of consciousness, because he like you had this awakening, and I think that's just a change in society. This is a shift that we're seeing everywhere in the culture.
Right, exactly. And here's the thing is that he brought it into physics, and I'm sure you're aware, this connection between physics and consciousness is really popular now, right? Quantum physics, quantum consciousness, quantum healing. Well, what is the original quantum and where does it come from? That's what we discuss in Module 4 in the Three Minds framework.
The whole foundation of quantum physics is based on the observer effect, which is all about consciousness, right? So
exactly. And where that has to go further is that the observer effect is talking about the split between the observer and the observed. And we have to go from a narrow understanding of consciousness, which is that the observer is here and the observed is here, and therefore consciousness is with the observer. We have to expand that understanding to say even the observed, in fact, is a modulation in consciousness. And that is why they dance together. And why does that happen? How does that happen? We cover that in Module 4 as part of the Three Minds framework.
That's great. That is really great. No, I think we're at a time, we're at a revolution in consciousness. Have you heard the telepathy tapes? You know what I'm talking?
Yes.
These non-speaking autistic children have access to a consciousness that's way beyond what we ever suspected. So we're at a time, we're in a consciousness revolution, and it's only natural someone like you, a doctor, is coming forward with a whole plan for activating consciousness into the healthcare system. I think it's very important. And how do people get in touch with you? Just through the website, or is there another way for people to get in touch with you?
That's the best way, through the website. pneumocore.com/consciousness is the course page. Please sign up. Have any questions, you can always email us. healing@pneumocore.com is the email address, healing@pneumocore.com. I would love to see you in the course. Let us work together. Let us unite. Let us come together and transform this planet to a planet of healing.
Beautiful. One last question. As an emergency room doctor, which you are, how do you immediately institute your philosophy into all the work you're doing day to day?
Well, if it's in the ER, it's at the time when the patient might be going home. It's saying, hey, did you know that nutrition, movement, connection, rest, these things, what we call very loosely lifestyle factors, that these things can actually make a significant difference in your health. Here's what you can do. Other times it's helping them by managing my own state. If I'm relaxed, the patient is more likely to be relaxed. If their mental body is more relaxed, their physical body is more likely to be relaxed. That means blood pressure comes down. That means heart rate comes down. That means that if you are doing some kind of procedure, they may be less anxious. So it's in the simple, fundamental ways that we are, and the simple things that we say, that we can make a difference even in the ER.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for coming on the program and sharing this knowledge, which is everything I'm all about, because if we're going to make a change in the world, we have to realize the infinite nature of who we really are, which is consciousness. Thank you, Dr. Anoop Kumar, for your work. And
thank you, Alan. I appreciate the opportunity.
We could do it again, too.
Thank you.
We could go into more detail and take one of those basic modules and just dive in.
Sure.
All right. Maybe I'll check out the course or something.
I would love Please do join. I would love to have you in there.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Be in touch, my friend. And thank you all for watching here online. Check out the website that numacore.com.